So, are you frustrated with politics like I'm frustrated with politics right now? Maybe you think the system is a little bit screwed and just can't solve the problems that you need solved, that I need solved. Plants could have something to teach us here. Yeah, plants. Those things outside your window that you pay no attention to, that you think are nothing more than scenery. We sometimes forget they're alive, they move more, they're more aware of their surroundings, they make more decisions than we think. And they've been figuring out stuff for 500 million years. We just have to get over this tree blindness that we have and find out what these planning, strategizing, cooperating, thinking creatures have to offer. Yes, I did say thinking. If you say they don't have brains and they can't possibly think, well, computers, remember computers, AI? We have entire conversations with AI, and AI does not have a brain, just some algorithms and whatnot. So maybe step away from the chat GPT and listen up, because trees have something to teach us. They have survived every cataclysm for eons because their system works. We probably would be pretty much foolish to not study what nature gets right, because nature can help. And don't take my word for it. A PhD student, Nathalie Mezza-Garcia, she explored the idea of bio-inspired political systems back in 2012. And taking inspiration from plants is not something new. Velcro is maybe the most famous example of plant biomimicry. Back in the 1940s, when a Swiss engineer found burrs stuck to his pant leg, and those little hooks of burdock seed, they get stuck in animal fur and socks and whatever, and the plant can travel just about anywhere. We have looked at biomimicry for ideas on robotics, for energy efficiency, architecture, hydrodynamics, tissue engineering, for God's sake. The list just goes on. And the one problem, though, is these explorations are rooted in a long-standing failure to consider plants as anything more than a resource. What can I make out of it? What can I use it for? What furniture, what paper, what houses, what medicine, what fruit can I take? And considering they're alive, maybe it's a little like dolphins deciding that humans really only have value as kibble for their pets, or using our bones to make a rocking chair? Okay, I don't know where I went off the rails there. I guess dolphins really wouldn't use a rocking chair. But maybe just shut up and listen to plants for a moment. That's my point. One of the most important lessons of ecology given to us by Barry Commoner is that nature does it better. And is that any wonder? I mean, they have been at it for millions of years. We are the new kid on the block, us hairless apes. So if plants have knowledge to share, what would they say? And, maybe if we could get them to show up before Congress or, I don't know, the United Nations and make some demands, what would they say? And that's actually an idea that was explored in this book, The Nation of Plants by Stefano Mancuso. And based on the way plants exist, he imagines a constitution that they would propose based on how they've refined what works and, abandoned what doesn't. And Mancuso is not alone in exploring the idea, but there have, sadly been only a few explorations of this idea, like that 2012 paper that I mentioned. But the ideas are really intriguing. So I guess the question is, what ideas? What can plants? Can plants give us about how to organize our society, our political systems. What would we get, and would it work? Well, okay, let's see. Back when plants decided to stay put, they had to evolve a decentralized form factor to survive all that might get thrown at them. And I mean, if our feet were glued to the ground, what the hell would we do? One glitch and we're down. I just got a damn hernia and this frickin' sucks. But it's not like they can just, chop me off at the waist and let me grow back from there. A tree, though, hell, there's a tree at the end of the street here with a 2-foot wide trunk where they sawed it down just a couple feet above the ground. And now it's sprouting little branches like, I got plans, motherfucker. They can survive this because they have distributed systems. You take off a branch and they seal up the wound and send nutrients to other parts to grow. Its life and its functions aren't concentrated in one place. There are parts, sure, that play specific functions, leaves, phloem, bark, whatever, but it's really hard to do them in on a single failure. They don't have a single leader or institution or brain, right? Rigid in its ways, telling the rest of us, rest of the plant what to do. But guess what? Every major political system that humans came up with does. Yes, even democracy. The people vote, but we are still putting someone at the top. There are still national leaders, centralized parties, and you might say, give power to the states. Well, okay, yeah, but state leaders, still in a hierarchy. Democracy tries to get there, sure. Distributed authority, branches of government, but it's still corruptible. Look at the news today, can't you tell? If something goes wrong, political instability is what we get. If something goes really wrong, political vacuum and some nut job takes control. Or worse, susceptible to donors and lobbyists. You corrupt one piece, one pillar. You get one idiot blowing holes in our system, like my hernia. The whole damn thing can just decay. Things like a Supreme Court with lopsided ideology, a press that's just too threatened to speak truth to power. But plants, trees especially, they compartmentalize the decay, right? Either they slow or even prevent any further damage. When parts for humans fail, in our institutions, we can sure replace a leader, but that's still top-down structure. And we're still imposing a constitution. There is still a required buy-in on culture or whatever legitimizes a system. And that calcifies us. We fight change, sure, but I don't know, maybe it's really best to learn how to flow, how to adapt to needs. And how's a rigid system going to adapt to different needs for different places? What I need in a southwestern desert is not the same as what somebody needs in the Pacific Northwest or a Texas floodplain. And in Mezza-Garcia's paper, she laid out a lot of these ideas, the same ideas that are in Mancuso's book, Nation of Plants. She points out also, though, that simplistic systems, hierarchical government, cannot control the true complexity of the natural world. And that's something that is extremely diverse. We humans, we are part of the natural world. Our entangled lives are on the edge of entropy. Like we're about to fall into some black hole or of chaos or whatever, but we keep it together because we have localized networks, right? And we make decisions as needed. And even the most oppressive regimes just cannot be there at all times and control what happens in every household and every neighborhood. I mean, if you want an example, I once dated an Iranian woman and I asked her, what about alcohol? Because, I mean, that's outlawed in Iran. She said, Simple. People make their own. They brew beer at home. Sure, it's risky, but the regime can't be everywhere. So there's a thought. And if plants maybe had anything to say, politics could be strengthened by following a localized hubs, aware of localized needs, and spreading out from there, modified as needed to other local needs, not answerable to a national overlord. And by putting in checks and balances like rotating voices and new social norms, you can prevent hierarchy, top-down control, and maybe protect against an erratic, aging president, ayatollah, supreme leader, whatever. These people, they're just too brittle to adapt to change or to even know our local needs. But they still try. They still try to control it. That dynamism in our lives, our spirit, it is not stoppable. Regardless what people afraid of change say, no more immigrants or denaturalize the citizens we don't like. You know what? Let's take Rosie's citizenship away. That's not our culture. That's not our people. You know what? You should listen to me. I'm the greatest. Me, trust me, your savior and glorious buffoon god. Okay, so some of you might be offended there, and maybe you agree with the powers that be, but remember, half the US is saying, fuck off, Taco, I have a brain, and less egomania that's clouding my judgment. So, so, still with me? Okay, what else? Trees don't grow beyond their means. If the soil has less nutrients or the environment is a bit harsh, the tree knows to conserve resources and it doesn't grow as big. But that lesson doesn't stop at trees, at one tree. Trees also know when to share. A forest is a whole web of mutual survival. Whether they're sharing nutrients through a mycelial network to help their neighbors survive, or pumping warning chemicals into the air to other plants as they sense a threat, or even sending carbon back through that mycelial network when they're dying to help younger trees thrive. Not even just to the same species. That's what this famous study by Sinnard and others showed in 1997. Douglas fir and paper birch exchanging resources. Okay. Yeah, that's a dangerous idea now. Compassion and sharing. I mean, someone's going to yell, that's socialism, or that's communism. Yeah, okay, socialism, what people think kills work ethic and pays everyone the same despite more effort, less or more, whatever. Or communism, where nobody gets to own anything, right? Yeah, not so fast. Let's ignore the fact that most people against those ideas have no clue what the two ideologies actually are, and the fact that these ideologies have been bastardized, manipulated by politicians worldwide, various countries, whether it's for or against. Those two ideologies do not describe what plants are doing. There's one key thing that I said, and I will repeat it. These governments top-down control. In socialism, a central government still manages national output, the economy. In communism, the government still commands all of the main properties of production. That is top-down. Now, okay, you might have said instead, oh, that's anarchy, man. But okay, I'd have to ask you then, how do you define anarchy? Because if you say mayhem and complete lack of order, you should know that's not what the political concept of anarchy is at all. At its simplest, it means no hierarchy, anti-top-down control. Now, I also think anarchy is not what plants are practicing. Anarchy is often created through violent upheaval of society, and it can leave a power vacuum that, again, is taken over, putting us right back where we were, or worse. I'm not talking mayhem here. There's still governance, and contrary to anarchy, there is always still one downward force that we can and should obey, just as plants do. A ceiling, I guess you could say, on our actions. And that would be our life support system, the planet, the environment, all the life in it. Today's capitalism is in conflict with all of our life systems and leaves people behind. And this is not necessary. It's a design flaw. We can change it if we so choose. Try nature's rules of balance and regeneration, not some GDP that's always going up and up and up. Like that's something that could last indefinitely without destroying the world, the biome we live in, the environment. And these are not my ideas, right? Read Doughnut Economics. Kate Raworth's ideas are worth being tried out. Ooh, I got a little enthusiastic there and pounded the table. By everyone. Everyone should try this at some level. And she also points out that we should ensure that we're not creating any critical human deprivations. Help the houseless and the disadvantaged. Give them peace, health, resources, a heard voice, considered voice, instead of, shooing them away. Basically, don't be a misanthropic snob who thinks your view is the only right answer. And if a political structure could capture the essence of how a forest thrives and how plants live, it might look like decentralized government. No heads of state, localized rotating deciders with input from the community, and that rotation is sacred to this society because we must protect against any individual's goal of taking power over others' lives. And it still needs to be worked out, right? Because one of the problems that affects past attempts would be borders, right? The parent country still dictates a lot of policy. And if borders must exist, let them be cultures and biomes. Desert versus another, versus rainforest or Arctic, they're different. So let that be the very real borders that limit how we handle things in one place versus another. And if one biome is not feasible for an individual, let them have the freedom to move to another one that does. I call it a biomimocracy or Biomocracy. There we go. That's better. So I guess for this biomocracy, what do we do next if we wanted to get there? I mean, how? Well, okay, so here's another lesson from the plant kingdom. As ecosystems modify, they adapt. And each plant regime gives way to others over time as they change the landscape and the environment. It's called succession, a gradual change making way for other species as the previous one readies the land. Grass becomes shrubs, becomes pine, becomes an oak forest. And we need our own succession strategy. If we try to fight a system head on, it hardens, it defends itself, determined to stay. And as Buckminster Fuller famously said, you never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, you have to build a new model that makes the existing one obsolete. And again, Mezza-Garcia in her paper has some ideas here on how we might get there. She suggests we take it slow. Go grassroots, avoid the drama, let government become more complex, burdened by the need to match the growing complexity of life is a way to break things down into localized leadership out of necessity. And there are tools to help us find these new solutions, new models, I guess you could say. For example, there's Decentralized is a program, a system programmed to allow for community input. And this solution is being tried by local city councils around the world and some organizations, some NGOs. Also, we need to understand that economy is a core component of political systems. It's talked about in this book, and Doughnut Economics. And this issue is tackled in there, calling on us to change our thinking because we've been learning from long entrenched economic principles in capitalism that are stripping the planet of every resource that keeps us alive for power or money, whatever, both. But work cooperatives, land trusts, open source economics, these can break down the power at the top. And they push our economy into something more organic, mutualistic, decentralized, adaptive, like plants. And if we do that, then politics will follow. Finally, we can also push our society into a new adaptability, get rid of that mechanistic view where we see everything as just a resource. See them as living things because that is what they are, just like you. Living ecosystems, a living planet. Nature is not something we go to experience outside our communities. It's everywhere. Cities are just a corrupted and unsustainable part of nature. We're not apart from the creatures. Otherwise, we wouldn't need bug exterminators. We're just the worst behaved creatures living in big square caves. And whether or not this is the solution, I don't know. I mean, if it would work, I think there's something there. All I can say for sure is we must change things. Try something new. We just have to try. And stop sitting back and hoping something is about to be done about this. Hope blinds us, I believe. And I want action. Let's build it. Let's build a biomocracy. Twigsy, like this, subscribe this, and stay tuned for more. Come on, biomocracy, that's a good one.